Hey everybody, welcome to Stormwatch by GreyNoise Intelligence. Each week we drop the latest info on what's happening at GreyNoise and Census now, take a look at a roundup of important and timely cybersecurity topics, and toss out some expert opinions plus the occasional conspiracy theory. I'm Bob Brutus, and with me are my co-hosts, Kimber. Good morning, Kimber.
Good morning. I liked the mention of conspiracy theory in there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
On this episode.
I think we can always inject a little bit of conspiracy theory in here. And so
organically every week, so I don't.
It does well because there's always some conspiracy theory going on.
And I feel like this week will be no different.
It won't be. What part of the planet are you honoring today, Kimber?
I am in Salt Lake, but I am heading to Wild West Hackin' Fest this week in Deadwood, South Dakota.
Have you been before?
I have never been. I am so
fun. It's beautiful. It's so fun.
Yeah, I've been to Deadwood before. It's amazing. I was there during Sturgis once, and it was a trip. So I imagine this will be roughly the same.
Yeah, more hacking.
Yeah, more hacking.
Like our cowboy our cowboy boots a required thing for attendance in that thing?
Oh, I definitely will be bringing mine.
And hats?
Cool.
No hats.
No hats. No 10 gallons, huh?
No.
All right. And we have Glenn. Glenn, I just got to say, could you have used more GIFs in last week's show?
Yeah.
I have failed. I have failed miserably. And finally, Emily Austin, intrepid census researcher, I get to announce, is now a perma co-host. Time permitting, like Census could yell at us that we're taking up too much of Emily's time, so I understand.
Until Census finds out anyway.
This is true, yeah. So welcome to the crazy house, Emily.
Yeah, I'm so excited. The last few weeks getting to join and just kind of like chat about all the weird stuff that's happening on the internet and the world has been really fun. So I'm excited to do this regularly. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
we are a little awkward last week because Bob wasn't on because he refused to share the stage with Emily, and so we really had to have.
That was the real reason.
It was actually yeah.
But we've worked through it, so hopefully, Bob, you can control yourself and your emotions today.
We'll see how today goes.
I'll try. Okay. Anyway, and also now, as usual, the only reason why any of this works at all is because of our amazing Overwatch Ashley. Ashley, good morning, and thank you for all the work you do for us. And I also want to give a special shout out to Austin and our design team. Just these epic graphics that he's been cranking out for the show are just amazing. He is so super talented, and I am so thankful that we have him to do this kind of cool stuff. And also a special welcome to all of our on-demand and podcast listeners. All right, so it's just about time to check today's cyber weather, but we have to do a reminder that you can find so there's a link for our live stream up there. We have a new cool domain that we'll be showing next week that we finally have to like kind of corral all these things into. So you can get the live stream links there every week. You can get the archive there every week and all the podcast links and on all the platforms. Smash those like and subscribe buttons, leave reviews of any kind. You can be nice to us or mean to us, whatever you want to do, just leave reviews. It'd be great. And Jordan had an amazing idea from our community. And so if you want to continue the convos around today's show, we will be doing that over at Discord. I will be firing up Discord right after the show. So if you want to ask us anything, I have no idea if anyone else is going to join, but I will at least be there to answer any questions or whatever you all want to talk about there, or just talk smack about Glenn. It'd be great just to do that. It'd be wonderful. So speaking of talking smack about Glenn, I need to show my screen now. So I'm not sharing my screen. No one told me I wasn't sharing my screen. I'm going to do that here. There we go. Boom. There it is. So that's all I can say. And there's the Discord thing. We got links and she's put them up. So Glenn, you want to talk about this thing, WordPad. Why are we talking about WordPad?
Well, it was just more. So last week we had, I know you weren't here, Bob. You weren't here.
I was here in spirit and I did heckle you once and I had the live stream up. I just could not listen to it because we were actually at a leadership offsite meeting and they were yelling at me not to actually listen to things.
No, it was we had this accidental theme last week that was basically what year is it? And then I saw this like I think right after, or no, it was Patch Tuesday last week. Yeah, so it came out right after our stream, and it was basically a vuln in WordPad, and it just kind of re-triggered the what year is it question that we kind of had throughout the show last week. One, WordPad is one of those things you forget about on your Like Notepad, I love Notepad. I use Notepad. WordPad, literally forget it exists. And so I think Microsoft did too, but the attackers didn't, or the vuln researchers didn't. So it was just really weird to see a CVE for WordPad.
I mean, okay, so technically it isn't a CVE for WordPad.
It's a
Is
CVE for Office
Yeah.
underpinning
Technologies, yeah, things.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to read through. So like the links are being dropped there. Podcast listeners will be in the show notes. I'm not reading through like the giant walls of text on the slides. That's for folks to reference afterwards. The wall of text being shown now that the podcast listeners cannot see is basically a mitigation technique for doing this. And I've only included the mitigation for WordPad because that is like one of the things you've got to actually set a registry key. Registry keys.
Yeah.
I hate Windows, but for all of the apps if you want to keep this thing protected. Although if you have Microsoft's like defensive tool sets, you're protected automatically. I guess that's what they claim. The interesting thing you say about forgetting WordPad though, Glenn, is that this is a quote from Microsoft about like at the beginning of the month that hey, we're not updating this thing. Like we don't care. We're ditching it at some point. I guess that's sort of a lie because they did inherently update it with that, DLL. So yeah. Okay. I don't know. Microsoft, just whatever. It's
I like is this you or is this the actual future release of Windows?
No, that's them. Like, that's me forgetting to put an S in there. Yeah. Yeah, that's me forgetting to put an S in there. Although I need to double check that because I did do a copy and I'm pretty sure I selected the whole thing, so it might actually be that. So everyone's favorite vuln this week. Sorry, you have another. You got more.
Well, one thought, like one of the things they recommended was blocking outbound NTLM over SMB in Windows, and like unrelated to this, but related to just best practice. Overall recommendation for organizations, like don't allow SMB outbound from your perimeter, like full stop. Just
a little bit. Like, just a little bit, yeah.
Previous roles doing IR and stuff, it happens all the time. Organizations just don't look at it, or they think it's going to break a lot of things. And just general awareness, like you 99 out of 100 times you should not allow SMB out of your perimeter, and 99.9% of the times when you enable that firewall rule or wherever you want to block it, things actually keep working normally because most things have been modernized to accept it. So anyway, just general awareness of a practice that folks should really.
All right. So since you went there, I want to ask Kimber and Emily some things not WordPad related, but like, so both Kimber and Emily, what are your recommendations for folks like with regard to this outbound? Like how do you actually like recommend organizations deal with outbound internet access for the general user base?
Ooh. I mean, everybody's kind of like on an allow all at this point for outbound, right?
Yeah.
What do you
got? I don't know that there is a great, like, I mean, how restrictive do you want to be? How much monitoring do you have the capacity to do? Like,
it's more like how
down like the outbound ports.
Like how the question is based, or the answer really goes to how many help desk people or tickets can you process in an hour to deal with all of the shenanigans that happen with blocking a lot of the ports.
Just turn it all off.
You would need a layer. You would need an application aware firewall and do it by application.
Yeah.
Oh, and then everyone would hate you.
It's a nightmare.
It's
a nightmare. But there are
with an iron fist.
There are low hanging fruit like the SMB outbound, like that one. Just don't, unless you're connecting point to point to a data center for backup or some service, whatever. Like, absolutely do not allow it. Anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
We are going to have to get an endpoint person on one of these days, just so they can give us a view of the desktop and just how miserable their existences are, like having to deal with people like us all day.
That'll have to be an after-hours show with tequila and.
Yeah, I mean it's 5 o'clock somewhere, Glenn. So I don't know what you're talking about. So. All right. This is true. So this week's fave vuln so far, thanks to Cisco again, once more, Cisco protecting everything, is a terrible. This is like legit terrible vulnerability in the iOS software. So like in the web UI, which you should never put on the internet ever. Don't do this. I don't know why people. I do know why people do it, but still don't. So we got a bunch of links up for this particular one. If you haven't heard about it, like this is nasty. Like there's basically a vuln that can be triggered that they'll put an implant on it, and you basically get all access to all the things on the Cisco device. This is nasty. This is really, really nasty. Has anyone else dug into this any more than like I did a cursory glance at this yesterday as we were trying to look through writing tags for it. Has anyone dug into this a bit more?
There was yeah, I feel like we're not even actually fully understanding this vuln. Like when you read about it, there is mentions of essentially there's a 2021 CVE that was exploited, but do you have it here? Yeah, yet as of yet undetermined mechanism.
Right.
And so there's two CVEs involved here. This is setting up like basically persistence.
Yeah, so
And
CVE 2021-1435 is the compromise to get persistence on the actual device.
yeah. So there's more to this than we know yet. And I think you have it here too, the Vulncheck blog. Yeah, exploiting the wild already, Kurt. And Vulncheck's blog mentions like they scanned the internet and found tons of already compromised devices. So now like that's definitely and this is I'm stealing Jacob's words here, but said like they really buried the lead in their article because the lead is this already happened, exploiting the wild, and this backdoor is widely available.
Yeah, the crazy part about this is like they found there's a link up for Vulncheck's blog right now, and that's from the screen for the podcast, folks. It's in the show notes. They have found, and so shout out to Jake for hitting us up early this morning, let us know they got a blog out for this, and they've found thousands of compromised devices, like thousands, which is probably a big reason why CISA did their cover update yesterday for this, because they most likely figured out that from what's happening there. I'm just going to go back to the previous slide for a second. So if you all are writing there's already some snort rules out there, but if you're got your own XDRs or whatever Forrester is calling it this year, you should make sure you got these rules plugged into there. So like, I'm not going to read the post URL, but you can all find it on the Talos folks they always do a great blog. They always do great blogs, and they did a great blog on this, really comprehensive. So I recommend people hit up links to go look at that and get your detection rules in, because we have actually found someone doing this pretty stupidly. So this, I'm showing an IP address 176.58.124.134 up on the screen right now. It's an Akamai fancy cloud thing. It's Linode. Like Akamai rebranded the crappy Linode stuff to like some fancy thing, Akamai thing. It's crappy Linode. I guess they're really happy they did that now, since like Linode is pretty much the equivalent of DigitalOcean in terms of the armpit of the internet. So we've actually seen this now. Howdy, I was talking to Howdy this morning. Howdy's one of our Epic researchers, and he's basically suggesting that a lot of folks out there are doing scanning for the actual device first before attempting to do the check if there's a rootkit on the thing already, or trying to do anything else on those things. So we're working on being able to get a tag up for that as well too. So stay tuned for that. But we at least have scanner tags. So if you hit us up, you'll be able to determine what IPs are actually trying to find compromised devices. And if you have one of these things, get your web stuff off the internet. And even on the internal side, keep it on some kind of isolated admin LAN, like VLAN. Just don't make these things generally available. It's really silly to do that.
I really want to highlight with this IP that was scanning for it, the reverse DNS is tequilaboomboom.club.
I think we should let this thing compromise everybody. That's fine.
They're clearly professionals.
Yeah,
Tequilaboomboom.club sounds like Mojo Dojo Casa.
All one word.
Tequilaboomboom.club. And we first saw this IP in 2019. So congrats to the researcher out there being the first one to scan the internet for this.
So Anilian, yank the network cables for all of your stuffs, please, for the Cisco stuff. Just yank them, just disconnect them.
Hey Bob, what's more disappointing? The last 7 or the last 10 days from Cisco with the hard-coded creds, and then this that was already exploited in the wild, or the fact that there was this many devices on the internet that shouldn't have been to be compromised?
Well, given that the previous one, like the number of installs for the emergency software had to be like in like the sub thousand or maybe couple thousand. Like I can't imagine that there was that many emergency systems on the internet. I think someone said there wasn't that many, and even sold and deployed there like what tens of thousands maybe of them versus like this is Cisco. Like this is every device that's got every Cisco device that's got a web thing, right? So I think this one's worse. I think this one's way worse. I don't know. Anybody else have like thoughts on that? Because like that was pretty bad. Like actually, you know what? I wasn't on last week, so I didn't get a chance to rant about this. So thank you for giving me a chance to rant about this. Why, like, shouldn't there be some kind of law, like actual like law, at least in the U.S. and any decent country that says if you have to like right now stop making anything new and just go look in all your software for hard-coded passwords and do not stop until you do. And if we find one, we're gonna basically fine you out of existence. Like, why don't we have that?
I feel like ransomware has capitalized on that maybe a little bit.
Ooh.
Like I'm kind of being tongue in cheek here, but like I don't know, maybe we have like security researchers doing it for us.
With a much bigger penalty than we could ever impose.
Yeah.
I mean, Emily says that tongue in cheek, right? But like they kind of, if you look at some of the like exchanges that people do post from like the attackers, they do actually call themselves like, you know, a vulnerability check service or a cybersecurity checkup service.
Yeah, like we've given you a free pen test.
Yeah.
It's free.
So
except
I might need to change my stance on ransomware. I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
Oh dear.
Oh man. So this next one, we've neglected to cover this at the beginning of the month, and I am not going to, there's 3 slides. I am not going to read all 3 slides. I'm going to basically give a summary of what the slides are. But somebody, some cool researchers, and the names are all in the thing, brought back like from the dead, a 25-year-old vulnerability. And like one reason why I need to talk about this is like, I remember when this came out, like the first time, because that's how old I am. And I cannot believe that it's 2023 and this is still a thing. All right. So without getting into like weird tech wonk things, I wrote a really crappy analogy, but like, I think it works. So if anyone's trying to figure out why, so this is Marvin attack. It's basically an encryption attack. And I used a lock picking analogy for this one. So pretend that these are digital locks and we're not physically manipulating the lock, but we're just seeing how long it takes for the lock to respond to different keys that are thrown, like input into it. And if you can do that timing and watch enough of those keys, try enough of those keys and watch the responses, at some point you can use that information to decrypt the stream. That's in essence what this is. And we're not actually stealing the key itself, but we're actually using to like unlock this data unlock the data one piece at a time. It is a slow roll attack. Most attackers aren't going to use this. This is usually nation state level kind of thing. We have a lot like more pressing things like, you know, default passwords and like these vulnerabilities that are easy to exploit that we just talked about. But I don't want defenders to take their eye off like these things. Like you should be watching for updates to these, and the fact that these researchers have discovered like there's still modern installations of things. And I'm going to jump to the last slide of this set. There's CVEs just a couple years old, and a couple of them are like, oh yeah, like so like the M2 crypto library and the PyCA cryptography library, they actually don't fix it. They require like you to also have the underlying OpenSSL library fix installed as well too. And a couple other ones like for OpenSSL at the API level and also the OpenSSL IBMCA, zero fix. Like if you have that installed and you're running that as your crypto for whatever you've got web front ended or whatever you're protecting with TLS, like you're hosed. And like the same thing, like really popular Go crypto library like Crypto RSA, it's got limited leakage, but it still does, like it still leaks. And the GNU MP library, it leaks as well too. It's not nearly as bad as the defaults for some of the other ones, but like this is 2023 and we still can't get crypto right. And like this is the foundation of everything we kind of do on the internet now. So I just wanted to throw this out there as like just beware of this thing, be apprised of it, because the other reason why I want to talk about it is there's been so much other, like, it's been a crappy month for defenders, and like there's been a lot of really important things that have just taken the limelight in the news. And most recently, like, we have a global conflict to deal with too now. And I don't know, did anyone else remember this from earlier in the month? Because that's one reason I wanted to show it. Like, this just slipped by, and I just want to make sure it didn't slip by everybody's notice.
No, I missed it.
Vintage internet is one of my special interests. Just FYI.
Okay, wait a minute. No, wait, time out. Okay, so Kimber, that hurt.
I'm sorry, but
that hurt. My
once
goodness.
something is 20 years old, it is considered vintage.
All right.
I do feel like we just heard Grandpa talk about.
Yeah.
Right? Back
Yeah.
in the day, you know. But I think it's interesting because this isn't the only thing that we see from the late 1990s, like the turn of the
Oh, wait. Yeah, actually, we're going to see this later. Like, we are going to see this later in the episode, like right towards the end. Like, there are the old vulns come. This is the spooky season. The old vulns come back to haunt us, right? And like, it's yeah. I got to say, though, like, I am now going to refer to myself in the opening from now on as the vintage host of the show, because apparently I have to do that now.
Like, if you remember the internet becoming a thing.
Yeah, I do.
I'm sorry.
I remember when this came. I literally remember when this came out. I was actually working at Johnson & Johnson at the time, when major crypto nerds, because like there was a bunch of the C-suite for like in the security leadership came from Gov, NSA, like spook stuff. So they were all over crypto stuff, and this was a big thing. Like we talked about this a lot back in the day. So
interesting because like there's just an agreement that basically this stuff will never get resolved. Like,
yeah,
you can't fix it.
Yeah.
And that's the same way with other like quote unquote vintage stuff. Is just, it's not going to get fixed.
This is a great question. So is this attack working? So does this attack require like a good stable network? And I would argue probably, yeah. Like, in other words, like if you are on an unpredictable, so actually here, I will take a shot at someone else. I'll take a shot. It's like if you're on Musk's crappy Starlink network, odds are you're not going to be able to do this attack. Like, you're not going to be able to do, even if you middle it, you're still not going to be able to do this well. You probably have to deal with it on pretty high speed things. And it probably is something that's going to happen inside of an organization versus on the internet. So I would suggest you're probably okay on the internet with this thing, unless you have really great network connections. I don't. I live in Maine. We have crappy internet connections. And this is more of an internal thing, like attackers sitting around being able to eavesdrop on things internally and be able to do this kind of key-based attack internally. So it's a great question. And I wasn't suggesting that like the internet's hosed. This is more of like watch what's going on internally, because if you do have some stuff you're protecting with this, you really want to do like what you can to like patch what you can patch and observe what you. And you can also choose to not use certain kind of keys and things like that. There's a whole technical description in the paper, and it got brought up. Actually, I need to get like it's in the link is here. This Red Hat security team did a great job both on the paper and on describing it like in decent, like accessible language on the website. So shout out to them. The research team did a great job on this one, poking at this, and not everyone pokes at crypto. So I'm really glad someone is poking at crypto. Pretty neat. All right, we're gonna move on to the next thing. And oh wait, aha! It looks like we have a video game. Okay. Oh, that's right. Okay, so what's being shown on here is my attempt at humor, to poke fun at InfoSec influencers, because it's been a weird 2, 3, 5 days on the internet. So I'm not on X. I know some folks are still on X. You should all get off of X. But I've actually seen it spill over to like the other social media networks. So I just thought I need to take a round of hands here. Has everyone knows that like you got to worry about Signal, right? There's an O day. Everyone knows about the O day for Signal, right?
Yeah.
It's really bad.
That's what the grapevine says.
So bad.
So like half the internet influencers are reposting the Signal O day for, I believe it's link previews. It's also been interesting that half or more of those influencers didn't understand that the link previews are generated on the sender side, not on the actual receiver side, that's a whole other funny thing. And then you got a bunch of other influencers who are like, that's fake news. This like, there's always a Signal O day coming out every couple of years. Why are you? And then they just fight each other. Like, it's been really, really fun seeing like all of the important people fight each other about this, while all of the regular people that are trying to use Signal to be safe are like, what am I supposed to do? So we've succeeded in Security Awareness Month, making people aware that cybersecurity professionals are morons. That's kind of what we've done in Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
I want to say this one got me because when it was originally passed to me through a group chat, it was something that was said to have come from like a government source.
Yes.
So like, I think that's an interesting aspect of this is like, even in our little like private group chats, we're getting fake information, potentially fake information. So it's, I mean, whoever's passing it along, like maybe they were, you know, taking it very seriously, etc. They trusted whoever, you know, passed it along to them. And then it escapes into the Twitterverse and it just goes crazy. So I'm glad that we take information sharing very seriously. I'd like to also add the conspiracy viewpoint into this, that whenever some big geopolitical thing pops off, there is always a signal Ode. Always.
Well, think about the, you know, the opportunistic aspect of that, right? With folks that are being, and like mobile spyware has been all over the headlines lately, lots of activity there. So it makes sense, you know, for some folks to capitalize on the moment if they're wanting to spread some disinformation with Signal. It is interesting, like, you know, I think to Kimber and Bob's point, like it does expose that like InfoSec professionals are not immune to any of these things that we fight in our real jobs on a daily basis. I think that, you know, we think we are, and then, you know, we eat crow whenever something like this happens. So.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I posted the link to internal IT Slack just to make for general awareness. I had no idea if it was true or not, but like just making people, I mean, and in essence, like if turning off link previews would save you from this, is it horrible to turn off link previews? And honestly, the one thing I will say is the one, I forget who it was that said this. I don't have link for it, but someone was arguing that enabling link previews in general, if you're not using a third party service to do the link preview gen and then just feed you the content, like you're leaking your IP information and whatever client information to it. So link previews themselves aren't great from a privacy perspective. But at the so actually, and Signal is supposed to be all privacy, so like whatever with that. But anyway, so like I'm just curious, is like, you know, like that aspect of it, I don't find horrible, but like this whole like bickering between like about this thing, and then finally though, I mean, the one good thing about it is Signal did come out and just lay it flat. Like they did the poking, they did the investigations, and like everything is okay. But yeah, to put the tinfoil hat back on, are they saying that because they're in league with whatever the people are? They're like, what? Yeah, I doubt they are. But we could conspiracy. This is really spiraling into a conspiracy. We are getting off this topic and get onto way cooler topic.
What better way to get people off the encrypted software than to say that the encrypted software is safe?
I mean, I had that thought. I was like, what if? I mean, you know, I'm not saying there's any that theory holds any water whatsoever, but it did cross my mind because
disclaimer, conspiracy theory.
Yeah, completely. But yeah, like it definitely felt like kind of like a chain letter or like an old like chain email. Over this to all your friends or they're gonna get hacked. Like, and yeah, even in these very closed, like trusted chats and conversations within the community, like still seeing this kind of propagate is really fascinating. And I would love to, like, if we ever figure out sort of the origins of this, if it was like conflated with another vulnerability, as somebody has mentioned, like however this happened, I would love to see like an actual analysis of sort of how this happened, particularly among folks who like, we pride ourselves on being like, oh, well, we're careful about this. We try not to propagate this kind of information. So I just find it really fascinating that, you know, as Will said, like, we're not immune. Of course not.
I do wonder and hope that if this were spread and then the comment or the conversation to fix it in the chain letter was, you know, like install this patch or something like that, I'm hopeful that it wouldn't have spread the way it did. But since it's like, hey, this may exist, or this does exist, disable previews, it was such a low, it was a no risk thing that, you know, it was like, okay, fine, disable previews and go on with your life because we have too many things to deal with right now. There's 45 wars and whatever. So I don't know.
It was interesting. So I kind of like said the same thing. I made a post on Mastodon. I was like, yeah, you know what? Why don't like disabling link previews is probably not the worst thing you could do. And somebody responded and they were like, actually, you know, having more people, I pulled it up, having more people directly accessing the shared links and thus having their metadata logged might just be kind of the reason for these rumors. And I was like, you know, that's actually an interesting take, I think, like kind of funneling people to the actual sites itself, especially given that Signal, the way they load link previews and the way that happens.
I see.
Yeah. So just kind of interesting thought there.
That's a really interesting thought. Yeah, like you would actually collect more information by having everyone load their own data than reloading.
That was their argument. Yeah. That it would be more useful to like keep privacy or keep link previews enabled. So yeah.
Oh, Bob, there's a comment from Kurt that I tend to agree with.
Cool. Show it there. Yeah. Oh yeah. Actually, so Kurt Bernard, super awesome cyber honeypot dude. I feel like it was a conflation of the recent WebP. That's a great observation. This could have been like from the WebP from before. But the misinfo has been interesting. I didn't think about the WebP being the vector for that, but that makes a lot of sense for people being scared of that.
They think it's loaded on the receiver side.
Right.
The ODE and the WebP, like that, you can map out that chain of events with some sense. But
yeah, and to Emily's point, it was interesting to see that Signal uses a WhatsApp /2 user agent as the thing that pulls the source from your client to the things that it's trying to grab the link previews from. So why WhatsApp and why add the /2, and like now everyone knows this, like even if you didn't know it before, and like that's just weird that that's the way they're doing that user agent thing. So now I got to watch for that in some of the logs that we have to see what's going on, or if there's an uptick in using that in some of the logs that we have here. It'd be kind of interesting to see. Speaking of interesting to see, y'all been busy over there at Census, Emily.
We have. I mean, everybody's busy. Who am I kidding? Yes. So I guess we can talk about this HTTP2 thing, this rapid reset vulnerability. So we touched on this a little bit on last week's show. I think it had just come out, like the blogs from Google and Cloudflare had like just gone live, and we were like, whoa, this is new. And didn't really, I think, have our heads fully wrapped around what was going on. It was
the Cloudflare marketing blog is what we were.
That's what we said, right? Like that was the first thing that got forwarded to me, and I was like, wait, where's the rest of it? I want to understand how this actually works. So we through the next few days, like kind of started to understand what was going on there. But yeah, so we actually kind of looked at this rapid reset attack that leverages HTTP2's stream cancellation functionality. And so basically, without getting super into the weeds, it enables folks to send this like request cancel pattern repeatedly to essentially like overwhelm a server's resources. And as we were digging into it, we actually did dig into the vulnerability itself, or like the actual functionality itself. And it turns out that like this is actually particularly like I think dangerous for servers that run HTTP2 that proxy traffic to another server. That's where you start to see, and like I think we've seen other folks saying that, right? So as of last week, we saw around 555 million hosts that had the ability to upgrade or like to use HTTP2. Interestingly, this morning I looked and we're seeing around 545 million hosts that appear to have the ability to upgrade to HTTP2, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't exactly know. We haven't dug super deep into what's going on here. It's been about a week. But just kind of seeing that change has been a little bit interesting. Obviously, like we saw a lot of it on like the ability to upgrade on Amazon, Akamai, some of these really large networks, right? Which makes sense because they're the ones who like initially talked about it and who really are probably the ones that are like most likely going to be affected by it or like have the resources to kind of absorb it. And like, I'm a little torn on whether I think this is super, super huge of a deal for like smaller organizations, just because I feel like there's lots of other tactics and techniques available. I mean, this certainly could be used, but I think where we see this, right, is in the big players in those spaces. So we dug into that. If you go to the blog, you'll see there's a census search query you can use. You can kind of do your own digging into where these hosts exist and track it along with us.
So curious, do you, and like, so you, they're sort of a competitor. They're not really a competitor. They do different things, but they probably, you can actually let me know if they're a competitor. This also, everyone, we don't script these shows. So like I'm going to surprise Emily and she may never come on again. So when Netcraft does their survey, like, cause they actually do they care more about like what the tech is being used on the server. And that's kind of their focus of like the monthly thing that they actually go do. Do you ever do a comparison? Like you have the ability to do that too. Like you all can do that. Like you have the same info that they have. But I'm curious, like, do you see it? Like, did you try to correlate in that drop between maybe people switch technologies of those servers, or did they just disable that? Did you so you haven't dug a whole lot more, but I'm more like, is that part of the analysis that you might extend, or that you have extended in the past when you do poke at things like this? Because that's a lot of hosts on the internet, and it's comparable to what they find too.
Yeah. So that's definitely an avenue that we would look at, because it's one thing to just say, yep, numbers go up, numbers go down, but like that's not really that useful in understanding the dynamics of what's going on, right? Like I can tell you, like, yes, these numbers changed, but why did they change? Where did they change? What are the autonomous systems and geographies where we see them changing? Like those are the kinds of things that we want to understand more. And is it something around like, what do we see replacing those technologies basically?
Okay.
Like, are they being firewalled off? Are they just disappearing entirely from our data set? Or are they just changing the technology they're running? And so, yeah, that's definitely then kind of the next round of questions that I think would make a ton of sense here.
Cool. Anyone else want to, I know you all talked about this last week, so I just want to give Kimber and Glenn a chance to hack Emily if you want before we do the next one.
No,
cool.
I think it's like like she said, it's more for the big players. It's interesting. I think it's interesting. Any kind of amplification attack, or where you can send out more than, have a out ratio of what you do and the impact it has, which is what this reset attack is interesting, and can be a problem for large players. Can be a problem, used especially during wartime. Like it can be used for a number of things, right? For denial services. So I'm glad that it's found and talked about, and it's interesting. But for most people, there's it's kind of not something that we can action at this time.
Yeah, it's like most people are probably going to be victims of this in the sense that they'll be victims of a DDoS from it, but it's not something that they can really fix. So I'm glad you looked into it more, though. That is interesting, just like the scale of potential there.
Yeah. I mean, I think like one of the things is like, use DDoS protection, use some kind of countermeasure. Like that's kind of your option. I think I saw last week, it might have been Nginx was releasing some like workarounds or like suggestions for how to work through this. I think it was Nginx. But it's one of those things, like it's just kind of, it exists in the protocol. Like there's not a whole lot you can do apart from making sure that you aren't using this to like proxy traffic to another sort, like just have it all in one, right? Like, or take it, protect it somehow other than just having it sitting out on the internet, which is like kind of hard advice because like it's web server, like, So
I'm actually going to force some hot takes for this one. I just had a thought about a hot take, and it's a hot, useful take too. I mean, you may not have a hot take, and you may have a less snarky take than I might have on it. This is everybody. So, assuming orgs have limited budgets, and I think every security vendor out there right now knows that virtually every organization has a much more limited budget right now than they did at this time last year. Now, then also assuming you were smart enough to actually have a Census subscription and a GreyNoise subscription, because of course you would. So not assuming you've already you paid for those really cool, amazing services. You still have limited budget left. So what do you guys say about this? Like to an org, like, hey, you got limited money. There's like a billion things that are now wrong. You got to fix. How far up the priority list do you tell people this should be to spend their remaining dollars on fixing this? Because they got money left. They got money before the end of the year, and they could spend money to try to, obviously Cloudflare did do this to get money shoved into Cloudflare, and you can do other DDoS providers, but like, what are your recommendations? Like, what do you tell orgs to do? They spend money in this, or do they do other things?
Who's going first?
Everybody, come on, guys.
Like, if you have the ability to do this, just disable HTTP2 on your front end. And like, there's so many other things that are like really, really, I don't know, that could potentially be really bad that aren't this. I don't know. This just doesn't seem, this felt a lot like, because like I was seeing so many questions about it. And I just kind of felt like of all the things that you as an organization are worried about, you're telling me this is the thing. Like, I don't disagree that it's bad, but there's so many other bad things out there too. Why aren't you being really concerned about those other bad things too? I mean, I get why, like, this isn't the news cycle. It's like the hot new thing, but I don't know. Like,
yeah, I wouldn't prioritize this if I, we're looking at the last like 10% of my budget as far as what to do. I would take mitigations like Emily just said, or I would just choose to accept that risk because it's still DDoS. It's still, unless my business, like, unless maybe I'm like Square or something, where my entire business is being online, or you know what I mean? Like, I can't make money or continue making money unless like everything's fully available. But for the average organization, whatever happens from this would most likely be temporary and short-lived. And, I'd rather prioritize items that are, like, let's look at what ransomware actors are going after, right? Like, those are the things that I would prioritize the last 10% of my budget on, and not something that's just, quote, just the denial of service.
Hot take, Kimber?
Enable MFA instead.
Ooh, I love it. Yes.
I like
do
that
what
was
Kimber
like a hard
says.
left, just like, no, this. I'm out.
Yeah.
That first exit, yeah.
Yep. As usual, it's so easy to just whatever Kimber says, just do it, people. Like, seriously, whenever that happens, just do it. All right, Emily, you got one more. Like, we were gonna DOS you some more.
Yes.
This is cool.
This is like one of my favorite things that we've looked at in a while, because it was just so weird and so cool, and the internet is so weird, and this just like puts it on full display. Okay, so over the last few weeks, like the end of September, wow, that's been like a month now, almost. The end of September, we started kind of like hearing rumblings and noticing these hosts that were in our data that had this gigantic server header. It was like 37,000 plus bytes. And we started noticing this, and it was just filled with like all these different software names. So like kind of unusual, like sort of weird what's going on there. Maybe somebody's automation broke, like we don't know. But then over the next few weeks, this went from like 50 servers to like close to 30,000 servers, like presenting the same behavior. And we started getting questions about it, like, well, what's going on? We were watching it being like, this is really weird. But we started getting questions about it, and we were like, we should really, like, we need to look into this. This is bizarre. And so it turns out that there are all of these hosts. I don't want to like spoil the whole thing, because I really want to encourage folks to go read this. The link is in the show notes and like on the screen now. But like, we started digging into this, and we saw that it's concentrated on AWS networks, and particularly one in China. It's a network that AWS like partners with, an ISP they partner with to like have their services available in China. And I don't know if you've ever tried to set up a cloud service in China, but it's really difficult to do. You have to like go through all of these like verification and validation steps. You have to have like some permits and other credentials from the Chinese government, which was kind of an interesting thing to us. We were like, well, that kind of narrows it down a little bit. Like, because initially we were like, I wonder if this is somebody who's just like doing this to try and like mess with internet-wide scanners, and then they're gonna like go do a B-sides talk and be like, here's how I broke internet scanning. But this kind of like seems to fly in the face of that theory. It still could be entirely, but anyway, we went through and kind of investigated like where these things were coming from. And again, I don't want to spoil it because I think it's just so interesting. But it seems like this very naive attempt to run, I don't even want to call them honeypots, because it's literally just they're broadcasting a ton of software in the server header. And we've seen them kind of evolve over like the last few weeks of September. And so, yeah, it's this very like interesting large scale set of like, I don't even want to call them honeypots. We actually created a label. So if you're in Census Search and you want to filter these out, you can like do your search and then add and not labels equals tar pit. So you can drop these from any results you have. But yeah, so just really interesting, really naive attempt to to do this, like it was weird because around the same time I saw Amazon came out with their, like, they disclosed their MadPot sensor network.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, this is all on AWS. And then we were like, wait, if this is Amazon, this is
Lame.
I'm embarrassed. Like,
Yeah.
this is bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're still watching it. We're still keeping an eye on it. It seems to have like died down a little bit. But yeah, there are weird things on the internet. Like, not everything is, nation state or super nefarious. There's just weird stuff floating around sometimes. I think you all probably know this better than anybody else too. Like, that's just how things go. Yeah.
I love that. Like, sometimes it really is just some kid on the internet and like just somebody who learns about doing a thing and they have a credit card and they're like, I can do this. And sometimes it just gets out of control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't
Kimber,
that how Andrew Morris started GreyNoise?
Yeah, sort of. Okay. So Kimber, I want to ask you a question related to this, because you are so plugged into the researcher scenes, you kind of like everything going on everywhere. Is there anyone doing research on knowing that the server header is gigantic, is anyone doing research on how different like client libraries behave? Like, I'm not just thinking curl, because there's other libraries besides curl, behave when they're grabbing, they're doing the initial connection and grabbing and parsing the server headers. Like, do you know of anyone doing active? I mean, and if you can't tell me, like, you can't tell me too, but because like I'm wondering if that's part of this research, like if this is an attempt to see what breaks when these things happen.
I definitely think that research is happening just collectively from people who are interested in this stuff. I think it's something that like the community that's interested in this stuff like realizes, but I can't think of anyone to call out right now. It's just, I think it's something also like we're interested in.
Yeah.
Right? I'll call us out.
I mean,
yeah, Emily was like, hey, we're going to be dropping a blog on unmasking honeypots. I hope you're not in it. We're like,
yeah.
Well, cool. I was like, there's no way. We joked about it. I was like, yeah, there's no, this is not you all.
Although I gotta say, I'm a little tempted to stand up some new sensors with this particular thing in it just to see what happens. And who's
I will say, people are getting more and more interested in deception technology.
I was about to say the same. Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot more conference talks mentioning it. I'm seeing honeypots in general kind of being on the rise. Everything gets trendy again. And I think that adding deception into your stack is a concept that is becoming more and more prevalent throughout like the kind of influencers and researchers that are going out and talking at conferences. So that's my big call out for 2024 is I think that we're going to see a lot more recommendations of like, where is deception in your stack?
I remember seeing it. This was like, I think it was like at the last DerbyCon. I remember seeing a talk about this. So like it's been swirling around, but it does kind of feel like getting closer to critical mass.
Yeah.
Especially with stuff like this. But so I'm curious, like in terms of sensors, like we also kind of looked at a few. I don't feel like they're that great. Like I haven't been super, like none of us I think have been super blown away. And also like I'm not as plugged into that community, obviously, as maybe you all are. So I'm curious, like, do you all also see that where it's like maybe there's opportunity to like create a really excellent like honeypot or something like that, because I feel like
Kimber's about to explode.
Yep. Right, okay, let it out. Let's hear it. I want to know.
There are so many different levels that you can hook on with this.
We'll have to table this topic for a whole session.
A special deep dive. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. This is fascinating to me, and like this in particular, something so large scale and so just not very good. Like it's that like it's like trying to trick vulnerability scanners into thinking that it's all of these things. Like zero interaction. Like forget low interaction. This is just there is none. Like I don't know. It's just
I think when we see people do this on like a scaled sense, they're going for wanting to respond to everything instead of getting really good at just one thing. So
Unix philosophy, but for honeypots. So that's what. Yeah.
why do one thing really good when you can be it all? So
I mean, the
it's-
bar is pretty low. And I guess,
is.
I think maybe with honeypots, it's also about like what your goal is. Like if your goal is simply to find out who's doing what, then it doesn't have to be interaction. It can be pretty stupid, really. If your goal is to figure out, the TTPs and threat actors and assign, the special threat actor number to them, then it's going to have to be, much more in depth, right? So I think maybe it kind of comes down to what you're looking to accomplish with honeypots, because you can go across, the spectrum is very wide. But traditionally, yeah, they can be pretty low to no interaction, which I don't know if Kimber's going to mention it here or if someone else is. Like, we have some cool things coming. We
may know some things about getting on the internet, and
yeah.
I think that's really kind of it's something that I'm glad Census is really looking at, because that's basically the goal with anybody who's standing these things up, is like, I want to get on Shodan or Census.
Mm-hmm.
Because once we're on your list, then we get included in the scan for that device.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to capture some Cisco NDAs, like, you better look like a Cisco device.
And only a Cisco device. I'll just throw that piece out there.
Right.
Yes.
Other things too.
Yes.
Like, 'cause those are
it's crazy to do that.
really easy to spot. But yeah.
It's like, this is running Cisco and HP and
it's a mainframe at the same
time.
Webcam,
Oh, and some industrial control systems.
That's my favorite, when those pop up and you're like, I don't.
Well, especially when the ICS systems are in Amazon, like, that's actually when it's really fun, because, like, yes, you're totally running an actual ICS system in Amazon. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, I love when things get placed in DigitalOcean, because I'm like, yeah, absolutely, that's real.
So maybe that's the best place to put it.
I was just about to say, this is my new tactic now. Like, that's the thing. That's where everything, the real
all critical infra. In DigitalOcean.
Yeah.
Oh God,
I want to meet the threat actor that's targeting the ICS systems in DigitalOcean.
I mean, the desperate threat actor that's doing that. Yeah, they're very, very desperate.
I wish I could scout.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe a small utility has been told, like, the cloud is more secure. The cloud will save you. So they're like, well, okay, I guess we'll just go run everything there. Why not?
Like, Tommyville, Ohio is outsourcing the infrastructure to DigitalOcean, and
I don't know. We have like the FedGov cloud stuff with Amazon, and like I think Azure has their own thing too. So like, I don't know. I maybe
for some reason the special systems being on Azure, like, that doesn't seem that far-fetched to me.
Probably has an Outlook plugin, so why not?
Oh gosh. All right, we are going to move on now. Glenn, I'm tapping you for these two. We have two blogs as well. Census isn't the only one with blogs. We has blogs too. Glenn, what is this Atlassian blog thingy you got up here?
Yeah, in case folks didn't realize, last week was busy. So yeah, we had a couple blogs. This first one is more Confluence. History has shown us that attackers love Confluence. So if CVE, if critical or even high, if Confluence, then you have like -3 hours to patch, basically. That's not an exact quote. That's just my gut. But that proved to be true again with last week's Confluence. Basically, this one's 10 out of 10 for the CVSS score, and essentially kind of retricks it back into setup mode, and you can add a user, add an admin user, and like ... you now have a newly created user on the Confluence page, so you can authenticate and do the data exfil or whatever you wanted to do, install things and live your life. So it's another example of, please don't put these kind of things on the public internet. VPN is useful. It is a friend. I know we talk about like borderless networks and stuff like that, but there's still access controls that are helpful. And so this is a prime case of that. And what else about this? Oh yeah, so like with remediation, like don't just patch, because this was exploited at nowadays. So like it was exploited at the time of disclosure. So like not only do you need to patch, but you need to go audit your user list, check your systems for signs of compromise, do the things that Confluence has recommended, and like take this one very seriously, because it always blows up, which it did. So
I gotta wonder, like for any InfoSec professional, like one of the questions they should ask when, like if they're applying for a new job or someone like reaches out to them, like, hey, you want to work here? Like one of the questions should be like, hey, like, do you guys run like Confluence? Because like I don't know if I would take a job at a shop that runs Confluence right now.
Job security.
yeah,
I mean, sort of. I mean, like how much can your liver take from the drinking? That's all I don't know. So
I mean, maybe the question's more of like, do you have Confluence? Yes. Do you have it on the public internet? Yes. Why have you not internalized
Do you
it? Like,
use Confluence Server or do you use Confluence Cloud?
Yeah, I would.
because cloud's always safe for some reason. Cloud, which is another point on this one that was very. And I looked this morning. I still haven't found an answer. Doesn't mean it's not there, but I haven't found it. I still want to know. It mentions Confluence Cloud users were not affected, but or have no action to be taken, but it never said they weren't affected. And so it's an ODay that was exploited before disclosure. We need to know the before times.
Yeah.
I was just looking for this answer because that's always the thing with these Confluence vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I haven't found it. I looked this morning. I haven't found it.
Not around. Mystery.
And I'm gonna put Emily on the spot for this one again. So she's literally gonna quit after being here now day one. She'll get rough guess. Like you probably have a rough idea of how many Confluence servers are on the internet at any given moment in time, right?
Ooh, wow, didn't even.
I
give her
mean,
a
we
heads
can
up.
tell you because we have a label for that.
Oh, we can see how fast the census search results are now.
Oh gosh, let me get the exact syntax for the.
I love that we could hear her typing.
Oh, sorry, I forget. Okay. So right now we see with our handy dandy label about 38,000 hosts that have the label Atlassian Confluence.
Oh, gosh.
Now, I don't know what exactly all of those are. This is
Right.
just a very naive label search.
Totally.
Census.
But still,
But
even like some fraction of those being out on the public internet is
Actually-
terrifying.
Even if it's 10%, that's.
How many of them are
Hold on.
hotbots?
let me remove the tar pit label. Let's try that. So
There
the
we
so
go.
the tar pits are the ones. So okay, this is actually way better. It looks like there's close to 8,000.
Oh,
If you remove the ones that seem to be with this giant server header, then yeah, that looks a lot better. I will post that in the.
awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So podcast listeners, look for the transcript for this. We'll try to get it in the show notes too, for that link to census. All right, Glenn,
Dandy label.
I am going to drop the next one. Maybe we should get through this a little quicker as well. if we can.
Yeah. So first, props up to Remy for the clever headline. Like he was asking, he's like, "Can we use this?" I'm like, "Absolutely, go for it." Like we love comedy.
Okay, we have a podcast listeners, so maybe we want to actually say the thing.
Okay, it's not going to translate because it's kind of a visual, but it's so you curl, but will you curl like CURL, CIRL? So anyway, but basically, so we talked about it last week on the show. We all knew that a week ago, within 24 hours, it was going to drop some kind of curl vulnerability, high severity. Everyone like clutch your pearls, whatever. And then it turned out to be more of the, as we kind of joked about last week, Emily and Kimber, the open SSL situation from 1 or 2 years previous. And so, yeah, it's an interesting vuln. I'm going to quote what Remy kind of sums it up in the final paragraph because it's well put, but it's basically through the lens of exploitability, which I like that phrasing. In practical deployments of curl, few could be remotely triggered. So it's remote, but it requires it has a local portion of the exploit. So like a lot of very specific things have to be in place for this to actually be a problem for you. So it's likely not going to be a problem for you. So annoying with the hype, kind of like Signal, like the hype is really getting annoying for these kind of things. We all have enough to worry about without like just making things up.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I'm going to avoid derogatory comments about curl maintainers too. Because only because lack of time more than anything else. All right, so old guy yells at cloud, the vintage internet host here. I'm getting on my dad's soapbox for this one. So for the podcast listeners, you can't see this. It is a picture of the Pillsbury cookie dough package. And it's circled is a new thing. I don't know exactly how recent this is. I came across this over on the internets. The new labeling is safe to eat raw, or so you can basically eat it or bake it. So like if you want cookie dough for dinner, now you can just go buy cookie dough and just get a spoon and just eat that for dinner, which sounds terrible, but it's okay. I've eaten cookie dough raw before. Everyone on the show we talked about before, everyone's done it. My thing about this is for the longest time. So again, like I remember these things, and like for the longest time, increasingly larger font size, bold, all sorts of things. Pillsbury always had, don't eat this. Like seriously, don't eat this. Cook it first. Don't eat this. Hazardous. Yeah. All the things. And they just kept trying for like 20 some years. Listen, this is not safe to eat. Do not eat this. They care about the humans, but it's also like, to not get sued. And what I love about this is like, they finally said, screw it. We're just going to make it safe by default. Like now the cookie dough is safe by default. You can still die of a heart attack, I guess, if you ate too much of it. But apart from that, like it's safe by default, or dentist, bills or whatever. And I was talking to everyone before the show. It's like, we spend a lot of our time like telling people like, and especially this month, I'm sure security folks, because you're the only ones listening to this, are getting inundated with this. But you're also right, preaching this too, like don't click that link, don't reuse passwords, don't plug in random USB sticks, don't use a flat network, don't use that. All these don'ts that we tell people to do, instead of actually just making the things safe by default, like actually safe systems, safe networks. Going the extra mile to code with like safer software now, like you don't need to use C anymore. Like there's way safer choices for things. Coding web apps in a more safe, like basically we still hate humans is I guess my point about these things. Cause it did take Pillsbury like 20 some years like to figure this out and actually do things safe by default. But like we don't have a lot of time to wax poetic about it. Why have we yet to make things safe by default in cyber, guys? Like why?
So I have very strong feelings about this.
Okay.
I think all of security, and this could be a whole other like talk or something else, but to keep it concise, all of security fundamentally is a psychology problem, and we don't treat it that way. Cool. We treat it as a technical problem, but really, no matter what it is, there is an element of cognitive science and cognitive psychology behind everything we are trying to get people to do or stop doing. Whether it's a developer following secure code best practices, whether it's somebody not clicking a phishing email, whether it's getting a threat actor to stop trying to like lob credential stuffing attacks at your website. Like these are all things that we have to incentivize and discourage in the appropriate ways. And we don't think about it that way. We think about it through the lens of everything being a technical problem. And that is a soapbox and a hill I will die on.
I would love to add in, if you tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it 10 times. So
exactly.
If honestly, like when I worked somewhere that said, don't click that link, I was figuring out ways to click that link and throw it in URL scan and figure out what it was. And I reuse passwords all the time for things that don't matter. And I absolutely will plug in a random USB stick. So there's a lot of people.
I hope Reed is not listening. I hope Reed and Frank are not listening right now. There are two amazing IT folks at work. I mean, they do more than that, but like if they're listening right now, like they're basically disconnect Kimber.
There's a lot of people with the curiosity curse, and they're like, I think we should just have the controls, right? At this
point. We need the controls. I think it started because maybe, like back in the day, there were less controls. It's still a struggle, but you're dealing with users with skill levels, from 0 to 100, and organizations need to protect that full skill level. And so it is a pet peeve of mine for the industry to always kind of push back on, the humans are the weakest link or whatever. It's like, well, you're gonna have to.
Oh, I hate that so much.
But I think it comes from the sorry, Bob. It comes from the graybeards. truly, in
Oh,
my
wow.
opinion.
I guess
I
it's, yeah,
think
I guess I'm only gray.
that's where it originated, is
Yeah.
these graybeard sysadmins being like,
Yeah.
people are stupid.
Hate for the users. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like this elitist, and InfoSec's always had this. It's another issue with the community. Like, there's like, you know, we know better. We are smarter than you.
See the signal vulnerability. We don't know better. We
Yeah.
are just as susceptible as everyone else. Like,
We've
we're
proven
not.
time and time again it's not the case.
Yeah.
But that stigma or that ego isn't going away fast enough or at all. I don't know. I feel like
Right.
it maybe is a little reduced, but like when you go to conferences and stuff, like you'll see, you know, like the InfoSec influencers, like how silly is it that we even have that term? Like that's a part of this, right? Like influencer says thing, and then people are like, so like, yeah, another session for a whole, another topic for a whole session, to be honest.
I read once that people bond harder on negativity than positivity.
Oh, for sure. That's why there's more negative reviews than positive, because like there's more emotion behind it, which goes back to psychology of emotion that we mentioned. So
Psychology cast. I love this topic.
Yeah.
The I guess my final word on this particular topic is: did you ever notice how like Glenn looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy?
Oh,
just a little bit.
Speaking of bonding harder on negativity,
Lord,
I'm sorry. I had to. I just had to. I'm
Man.
sorry.
I'm calling HR.
All right, so we are quickly coming into the end of these things. So Glenn was not wrong. It was a very engaged week last week at GreyNoise. A very, very, very engaged week like, wow, I cannot believe. So I've got a list of all the tags that we've put out since last time you wrote the show.
When you leave us alone, Bob.
I know. So I actually talked to Andrew about like me never coming back to work again. It's like, this would be great.
You too.
I think Kim just responded to your request. There's a link up so you can all go see the recent tags. Not a ton of activity in any one of these, although we did actually get a hit on the scanner. I'm really glad we got that out. Thanks to people. I actually started a tag creation, and I believe it was Howdy that cleaned up my tag. So thank you for that, Howdy. Yeah. What? My query. Anyway, we are not airing internal tagging grievances on this show. Anyway, so take a look at all those. There is some activity for them, but there isn't. And it's also been 1 day since the last Kev release, which was the Cisco iOS thing as well. And since the last time we met, there have been a bunch of Kevs, a lot of them related to Microsoft, and the Rapid Reset got one as well too. Although I am trying to figure out why a denial of service attack is in Kev, but that's neither here nor there. I'm not doing it today. We don't have enough time to do it today. I'm not gonna Todd. Just why, Todd? Why? Anyway, we'll do that later.
Often DOS can find the RCE, but that's future.
Yeah. I don't know. Actually, the one thing I will call out, Sis, on this one, we actually reported a bug in Kev when the Rapid Reset attack came out and got posted into Kev, because inside the notes, so there's a notes field in Kev for people that don't know that, and in Kev, in the notes field, it was TBD, probably a Cloudflare link, and I'm like, okay, this should not have published. You should have done a better job on this one. So they fixed that, which is good. I'm dropping a resource now, so the links will show this. A fine chap, Sinfinner on GitHub, has for people that aren't obsessed with this like Kev thing and SysAkev and vulnerabilities, it is a very small JSON file. It's like 1,030 some entries. Like they crossed the 1,000 barrier like a little while ago, and it's not a lot of data. Like for everyone on here, and like Emily has gigantic data, like we have gigantic data. So this Kev is adorable. It's tiny. It's really neat. But there are some folks that needed an API form to do like enrichments because they can't just keep it for whatever reason. The platform doesn't allow a Kev and JSON form in there. So this is a neat little thing you can clone from there. Make sure the source isn't poning you. Like always read through the source before you clone and run things, please. Everybody, don't just run things, especially inside your enterprise. And this creates an API over the JSON. The dude hosts it as well on GitHub, but like I think it's on GitHub, or no, it may not be because it looks like it's a full domain. But I wouldn't use their API because you could just run it yourself. It's easy to do. I also wouldn't use an API. I would just use the JSON. But it's a really neat project, so I wanted to showcase this because we don't showcase enough open source on the show. The next thing I wanted to do is mention that I actually mentioned this to Glenn last week because I have a Kev alerting service that anyone can actually use if you want to. We can link to it some other time, or you can just hit me up. And I got a post of it. I'm like, Kev didn't change. Why did I get an alert about Kev changing? And I forgot about like the fact that on the 12th they added is this CVE used in ransomware? And that's, well, it sucks that they have to add that. So it's not cool that they had to add it, but it is cool that they added that because the extra context should help everybody understand the importance of some of these things. And Glenn, to his credit, had a cool idea to say, can you visualize this? And this is, I'm showing, there's a link to the observable notebook. This updates every time that there's a new Kev with a with an updated ransomware CVE. And I'm right now just on screen scrolling. I have to make sure it's working. Cool. I'm scrolling through it. So this is looking through all of them. There's a bunch of them. It's almost 200 of them. And in recent times, just you can see on the screen, like as the CVE comes out, it's almost immediately used in ransomware, and in Kev basically saying yes, it's used in ransomware. So that's okay. That's scary. That's so if you didn't know that before, everyone, some of my co-hosts, does that scare you as much as it scares me? Like that this is how quickly the ransom folks can actually weaponize these CVEs to win, or is it like I'm an old guy who thinks too old and too slow?
I wasn't surprised. But I think it's a biased viewpoint because like we just know these things because like responding to emerging threats for years, like we just know. So maybe we're not the right people to ask, but my answer would be like, no, not surprised. It validates what we felt.
Right. Like if the vector isn't AVN, I assume that it's used in ransomware and coming through email.
Okay.
Also, ransomware is not like picky. Like they just want it. So
yeah, that's a good point.
Ransomware on this, like the ransomware flag for Kev or any service is useful because right now, like that's what organizations prioritize. And that's not wrong. That's just not the only thing to prioritize, but it's what moves the needle for prioritization. And so it's great that it's added here because the Kev also is, so that moves the needle for prioritization for organizations. So all good things, but let's not forget that, or let's not treat this as like, I only need to focus on these 200 bones or whatever. Like, absolutely not. Please don't do that. This is so bad.
Yeah. And it's like, as we were talking about earlier in the show, I'm scrolling through this thing now, and like we're going all the way back. And like if I scroll to the bottom, not back to the 1990s at least, but like almost back to 2009, we actually have a CVE 2009 3960. I don't know what that. Maybe I should know what that is off the top of my head. I don't know what this off the top of my head. I'm also doing talking Sullivan in case anyone wants to look it up. But like that's a long delta, like literally from 2009 to 2023 or 2020. Like that's I think it was looks like it was 2022 that it came out in Kev. Crazy long life for this vulnerability that's still active, according to at least what CIS is saying for those things. So this, you can all reference this thing. It'll get updated automatically every day. And if there's a new Kev for the thing, one thing that and we never end the show on a positive note, like almost never. And I wanted to today because. And this is praise for CISA for having this visibility. So I know Glenn just did a CISA Love Fest too, but I'm doing it too. I really appreciate the service that they provide. This is helpful. It raises awareness. It gets orgs to do things. It does move the needle. I really appreciate what they do. And if you're looking at the histogram that I put up here, we are getting way better at providing this notification and providing this visibility, and the time between a CVE coming out and knowing this important information about it is being compressed dramatically. So we're not going to have like these long tails. I'm sure maybe there will be a vuln or two from the past that will raise from the dead and come back and do these zombie vulns. But like this is great. Like the folks that are doing protections, the folks that are doing this kind of work are moving the needle. We are like, you're all making a difference. This is really great. And I'm just thrilled that we can end one of our 20 odd shows on a somewhat positive note versus like the depression that we leave people in and like the drinking that they have to go do afterwards. So yeah. Anybody have, like want to pile on any more thoughts about the Kev thing or? Cool. All right.
We throw shade at a lot of places, a lot of times in jest, but that doesn't mean that, it's all bad, right? So like Cisco sometimes will question. Like last week we kind of talked about their list of top 10 misconfigurations, and we were kind of nitpicking, like, but these aren't really misconfigurations. Some of them are just poor decision making. But anyway, like that doesn't mean that we're like necessarily picking on the whole thing. So
All right, good show, long show again. I am. Oh, okay. Quote of the episode: tequilaboomboom.club. They are clearly very professional. Absolutely.
They do have a note on their site that says, "Hey, you might have seen us in your scans. So if you want us to stop, just email us."
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Legitimate.
Nice. Very
Well,
cool.
consummate professionals.
All right. Well, as our newest perma co-host, Emily, you get the first parting shots. Any parting shots, everybody?
Oh no, I wasn't prepared for this. I don't.
That's my job. That's my job is to actually.
Oh,
Okay, wait. We'll do Glenn first then. Glenn, you got any parting shots for people?
Oh, I wasn't prepared either, and I still knew. No, I think we've said enough today. It's a long show.
All right,
Yeah.
Kimber.
Just
Don't say MFA.
no, don't. We've already enabled MFA.
Okay.
Make a fake honeypot. Just spin something up. See what happens. That's my parting thing.
Okay, Emily.
I think my parting thing is take your login pages that don't need to be on the internet off of the internet. Just
like that.
Fair.
Blanket. Yeah.
Fair.
If Grandma can hit it from her phone, maybe.
Yeah,
it should.
not cool.
Yeah, shouldn't be on the internet. Just think about that.
Sorry, Grandma.
And I will take my parting shot as disable link previews in Signal. Thanks for joining, everybody. Remember, we do have this on demand. We do have the podcast. And I also want to close the show with a massive thank you again to Ashley for keeping up with all of our ramblings, dropping all the links, doing all the prep. It's amazing. The show wouldn't happen without you. So thank you, Ashley, and everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.